if you look at the amount of money that socially liberal Zionists like Paul Singer and Sheldon Adelson are giving to the so-called the fake conservative movement in this country, which has pretty much abandoned issues, like gay marriage and a whole bunch of other social questions, in order to practice what I call Bibiism, which is almost fanatical support of the Likud government in Israel, and a tendency to see good Christians as people who support Zionist and Jewish these Zionist interests. People who complain about this, I think, are perfectly justified. I think they do represent problems. On the other hand, you have an anti-Semite like E. Michael Jones. I find him utterly ridiculous. Jews are behind everything. He's a fanatical Catholic of a certain kind who blames the Protestant Reformation on Jews. Luther was controlled, even though he didn't like Jews, he was controlled by Jews. Calvin was a front for Jewish interests. There was an entire book that Jones wrote, which I reviewed for Chronicles a number of years ago, about the shame or destruction of cities. And it's all the fault of urban planning, which was put together by a combination of wealthy German Jews and Protestant city planners in order to destroy ethnic Catholics in the city. Well, the reality is all the urban planning was adopted by Irish Catholic Democratic mayors, as far as I know. I remember this. But, for Jones, this cannot be true. This is there's a book on the eternal Jew or the eternal Jewish revolutionary. And you even find Jewish converts to Christianity who are on the ultra-right, like Friedrich Stahl in Germany, who's depicted basically as working for international Jewish interests. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. He's unteachable. Another kind of anti-Semitism, which does bother me, I don't think it represents some great danger to the world. I just think it's just annoying. And I think this was represented by Joseph Brand, whom I liked personally, but, seemed to apply to the state of Israel standards that only exist in heaven. Whereas other countries were allowed to do what they want, but they were not judged by the same angelic apostolic Christian standards as the Jews were in Israel. Now, when people make that sort of argument, they basically don't like Jews. Or they're anti-Israel because they don't like American Jews, which may be justified, but then, it's not the fault of the Israeli government. But, it's sort of a way of taking it out on them. And I found Brand's attacks on Israel extremely tiresome. And I'm not a fanatical Zionist, and there's obviously things wrong with Israel as with other countries, but it was the relentless criticism I found just tiresome. The same thing with Phil Giraldi, who writes for the Unsk Review. Jones is the most tiresome of all. I don't think these people represent a danger to me. That my life isn't endangered because of them, certainly. I'm much more concerned about black anti-Semitism or leftist anti-Semitism. I just find these people annoying. As for Richard, I think his anti-Semitism was almost something that he took over, faute de mieux, was just there, and he thought it made him look a little more fashionable. Because I knew Richard, and he wasn't anti-Semitic at all. He didn't even seem to dislike blacks that much. But then this sort of became part of the persona, the neo-Nazi persona. But he was assuming. So he sort of took over these prejudices because he thought that this would make him seem, the term he liked was edgy. He'd be edgier if he took these over. But it never bothered me the same way that E. Michael Jones bothers me. It may be sort of my emotional reaction, but Jones is just so tiresome. With the eternal Jew, every Protestant is really a Jew in disguise. Anyone who disagrees with His Holiness the Pope is a Jew in disguise. I can't stand reading this sort of stuff. And whenever people say that, there are two major influences on their thinking were E. Michael Jones and Paul Gottfried, I get very, very upset. That's LinkedIn.
Well, I think a problem here, Paul, is that when people have dealt with a dishonest playing field for a long time, they don't react proportionately. So, for example, you tend to find a lot of ex-CIA officials who rabidly hate Israel. And why do they rabidly
Right.
hate Israel? They saw that during their time working for the CIA, that America's national interests, in their perception, were being sacrificed to further the interests of a foreign power. And this drove them mad. And so that's why you have the intensity of this reaction in people like Phil Giraldi. It's because they've dealt with this distorted playing field. When people come out of a rigged game, where they've been forced to participate in a rigged game for 3 decades, and then they come out of that, they don't come out of that calmly and proportionally. So too in American public life since the World War II, it has been socially unacceptable to criticize Jews as a group. Well, every group benefits from accurate criticism. Jews benefit from it as much as Muslims and blacks and Protestants. But it is socially, politically unacceptable to make any critical observation about Jews as a group in the Western world since the Holocaust. Well, this distorts the playing field. So you have open season on white Christians, and then you have all these protected groups. And so people don't react to a rigged game, generally speaking, with moderation.
I agree entirely with what Luke is saying, but I think Jews are not protected if they associate themselves with the right. If you're saying that, there's a lot of anti-Semitism and it's coming from the left and it's coming from blacks, you're not going to be embraced by Jewish organizations. You're surely not going to be embraced by so-called philo-Semitic Gentiles. Just as Clarence Thomas is not being embraced by the so-called black community in the way that Michelle Obama is. So I think there's also a political litmus test that is applied to being anti-Semitic or fighting anti-Semitism, because it's assumed that all anti-Semitism that we fight is a function of the right, as the Anti-Defamation League and other American Jewish Congress would understand, or wish their members to understand anti-Semitism. And someone like E. Michael Jones, by the way, is the perfect illustration of everything these people are saying. He really is a right-wing Catholic anti-Semite, with these almost sort of medieval prejudices.